Hello, welcome to our live. We are inside the Radiantly Alive Woman Facebook group. It is really great to have you here today. We have a very exciting topic. So I'm going to just spend a few minutes waiting for women to find this live inside the group. So as you make your way here, just send me a message that you've made it and you found your way. Give me a hello or a hashtag live. And if you're watching the replay, give me a hashtag replay just so we know who is watching and benefiting from these videos. So if you have been watching this group, you will know that I have begun a SCAR series. And this SCAR series was kicked off on Tuesday, which was 2 days ago. And we did a video all about thyroid scars, the importance of thyroid scars, how to think about them from a physical perspective, an energetic perspective, and then most importantly, what to do about them. How can you begin your own preliminary steps into working on your scar so that you can feel good again, so that you can confidently take control of your health, and most importantly, so you start to build back in that sense of inner trust and inner confidence that we are often missing when we've been dealing with something for a long time. There's a lot of confusion around what's going on, how can I help myself, and this SCAR series is to help bring clarity to some of those questions. Today, which is the second video in this series, we are doing a whole class on C-sections. This is a really big topic, and there's a lot of different variables. And one woman's C-section story will be different from another woman. So I'm going to go into this in a very direct way and giving you as much information as I can. And if there is specific questions that you have about your C-section or maybe someone that you know, please feel free to just ask me. I have a well of information in here from working with women for nearly a decade now. And the more you ask me, the more I can give you help and assistance and guidance, and the more you can actually like pull out of me so that you have as much information as you need. So C-sections are a very common scar on women's bodies, and I thought that we should just jump right in and address one of the biggest ones right off the hop. So I'm going to address, this is how the SCAR series videos are going to roll out every time. I'm going to first go over the kind of physical considerations and components to the scar. So we're going to touch on organs that it's next to, things you want to think about as far as like movement and muscle, think about the circulatory and the lymphatic system. All of those kind of physical components will be in the kind of first part of the video. The middle part, the second part, will be all the kind of energetic and emotional considerations, what you need to be thinking about in regards to that with the specific scar today in consideration with the C-section scar. And then the final phase of all the videos is always going to be what to do about it. I'm going to be giving you preliminary steps. I work with women one-to-one in 6-month programs where we go through a very kind of progressive, grounded kind of process bit by bit, and we weave into a bunch of different body techniques to work on the scar physically, energetically, and emotionally to resolve any long-standing issues that the woman has going on with her health. But I want to offer every woman in this group a little bit of just a little bit of simple guidance. This guidance that I'm going to be giving in these videos is very precise and it's very impactful. So don't think that just by watching these videos that you're not getting tons of info. I'm really cramming in as much as I can with being respectful of your time and also knowing that giving you tons of information and tons of different options is not the best way to go in this kind of setting. So if you are interested, please let me know. I'd be happy to schedule a free complimentary consult where we can chat about you specifically and if you're wanting to move forward. Okay, so let's get into the physical components of a C-section. Like I said, this is a huge topic, but I'm going to try to narrow it into the most important pieces. A C-section, it actually, interestingly enough, so I've worked in 3 different countries now, And the C-section scar can be in slightly different areas depending on where you're living, depending on the way that the surgeons are cutting into the body. But in general, the C-section scar is somewhere between the belly button and the pubic bone. And sometimes it is spread, it's, crossing a long distance, quite a few inches, more towards like from one hip to the other, or sometimes it's a little bit shorter. This doesn't necessarily matter because I want to help you understand that the scar that you see or the scar that you can like touch at the skin surface is not the only thing we're talking about. We're talking about this on a very holistic, integrated scale. So the scar, a C-section scar, is very close to the following organs. It's very close to lots of your digestive system, particularly your guts, like your small intestine and your large intestine. It's all kind of in that world. It's also very close to your bladder, which I'm sure some of you already are very aware of. The scar tissue can directly impact your bladder function and your bladder control, which is something I'm going to talk about. It's also very close to your uterus for obvious reasons. So we want to think about that and how the scar impacts those moving forward. If you have a scar, so I've spoken about scars in a very in-depthly and very superficially. So I'm going to try to weave my way into the sweet spot here. But I want you to think of scars like as they're healing, as like a Spider-Man's web is how I explain it. Spider-Man, the action hero, his web will kind of if this is the surface, kind of go and push itself down in through the body until it finds something solid to latch onto, to anchor onto. This is really important because the organs. So ideally, all of those organs I just listed are not solid organs. For example, your digestive system is ideally a tube. If you suffer from constipation, that organ becomes more solid than not. And so oftentimes the scar will try to bury itself into the gut, try to get a little bit of stability from the constipation, from the bowels not emptying or evacuating fully. I'll tell you why the scar is trying to anchor in just a moment, but just stay with me for a second. The same thing with the bladder. It's kind of odd in this modern day, but a reality that we don't have time to go to the bathroom. This is really common for teachers, for example. Teachers who are constantly working, standing, teaching, presenting, and they actually don't have any time to rush off to the bathroom. So the bladder becomes more of a solid organ rather than a not solid organ. And this is a problem because the scar can try to bury itself for the same reason. If you're having different types of contraceptive, for example, like an IUD, a copper IUD in particular creates inflammation in the uterus so that so that you basically can't implant, you can't get pregnant because there's a low grade inflammation there. That creates a stress and a kind of a solidness to your uterus that is not supposed to necessarily be there. So it's another opportunity for the scar to embed in. So why is the scar doing that? Let me help kind of paint this picture for us. The scar, as it's healing, wants to be solid enough so that it doesn't reopen. Because when a scar, when a cut, a wound opens, then there's a potential for infection. When there's a potential for infection, it means that every body system has to function to rid all the systems of the infection. So it's very tiring to be sick, to have an infection. And if you have noticed, when you are not feeling well, when you have the flu or you're under weather in some way, it takes you over completely, and a lot of your body systems are impacted. Maybe you have, you're not as hungry, you feel really tired, you have like brain fog and you can't do your work. It's a big deal to have an infection in your body. So your body will try to close any wound up as quickly as it can. And it will try to avoid getting reopened, so it will bury itself down into solid things to start to heal the wound very deeply and make sure that the whole incision is healed. for this area, C-section in particular, it's mostly soft. Like I just explained, all the organs should be mostly soft. And the only kind of hard parts of that area are your hip bones or your ribs. Ribs are kind of high for a C-section, so you're much more likely for the scar to kind of start to bury itself down into your hip bones. They're actually, the proper term is your pelvis, it's the front of your pelvis. And it's looking to anchor onto those bones as well as your pubic bone so that it doesn't get reopened. Now, because a C-section is also cutting through all the layers of your abdomen to get your sweet little baby free and into this world, it's going in very deep, and so the scar is very embedded. It's very ingrained, quite literally. So when I was talking about at the beginning, the scar that you see, whether it's like tiny or really long, that doesn't necessarily matter. We want to think like in 3D, and we also want to think about not just the physical look of it, but the whole healing process around it. Did it get infected, or all these things like as it's healing. The last thing I want you to think about for C-sections in the physical sense is it's kind of in line, well, it is in line with our low back, with our lumbar spine. This area of our body moves a lot. We need it to be doing a lot of different things. Every time we're like reaching back to grab our purse from the car, it's being impacted, it's moving. Your scar is being stretched, your lumbar spine is moving. Every time you reach up at the high cupboard, every time you go to the bathroom, every time you're ideally breathing, there's input into this area. It's a part of the body that has a lot of opportunity and a lot of range. On Tuesday, when we did our thyroid scar, I spoke about how much the neck has the potential to move. The neck has an incredible amount of range because there's nothing on the top. Like there's nothing anchoring us down to slow down any movement here, which is why necks are commonly very tense because they're not functioning optimally and there's nothing to kind of hold down the wild amount of movement because there's nothing on top. The lumbar spine is like kind of jammed in between the rib cage in the pelvis. And so it has an incredible amount of movement. There's a lot of soft organs around it. So when the C-section is healing, it's a area that is highly prone to any type of like muscle pain. So back pain, disc stuff, things that happen just in this general area, chronic hip tightness, trouble breathing. There's all these like physical components that are so important that we need to think about when we have a C-section scar. So those are the kind of physical things I wanted to talk about. The last little thing I want to touch on is just thinking about all the layers of the incision for the physical and your core. So as women, I don't know why this happened, but we are really interested in having a solid core. We say this a lot. We want to have tight abs or like good core stability or however we say it. This is really important to us. And it is important to all people. We want to have really good core stability. But if you have a scar through that area, I guarantee that the muscles of the core, the muscles of your abdomen, your like core, there's 4 layers of abdominal tissue that will not be working very well. They may not be working at all, depending on the scar and the certain circumstance around that C-section. So it's very common, and I have asked actually a couple of my Pilates like master teachers if they see a correlation between women with C-section scars and loving Pilates. So it's because when we get the C-section scar, we lose that feeling of getting of stability. We lose that sense of having a solid, stable torso. And so we move into types of practices that help stabilize that, which is Pilates is really good at that. A lot of women who have C-section scars are kind of cautious around other types of movement like yoga, for example, where there could be potentially a lot of twisting depending on the style of yoga that you're doing. It totally depends on what type of actual postural yoga you're doing. But in general, you'll see more women with C-sections leaning into stuff like Pilates on the whole. So, in my world, the better way to go about this is to directly address the scar in its physical and energetic emotional form so that we can reconnect with those muscles, so we can actually feel stable, so we don't have low back pain or pelvic pain or disc stuff or digestive issues. All of these things are lumped into our scar, and we want to figure out how to work with the scar to resolve these things. The C-section, as you probably would have heard, I'm just going to go over here and make sure that I can see all of you if you're commenting. As we know, the scars on the midline, I am always talking about scars on the midline being incredibly impactful. Now, the scar here across your torso is it's probably one of the bigger ones. It's going to be bigger than a neck because a neck is more narrow than your waist. And it's probably going to be bigger than any type of like breast reconstruction, augmentation, because it's crossing a very large area and in one swoop, where breast is usually a 1-in-1. Generally, depending on how old the breast surgery was, kind of smaller. So we want to be thinking about the importance of the scar on a physical level. There's like fluid stuff that we got to think about, circulatory stuff. But as a excuse me, as a whole, I think that that's a good starting point for understanding the impact of the scar physically. Imagine this scar weighing down on all that tissue, which, like I said, is your digestive system, your bladder function, your reproductive system, all the muscles that keep us feeling stable, help us with our balance, help us feel like we are protected in our spine. That's what the scar tissue in the C-section is challenging. You're not going to be able to get the same level of efficiency and the same level of control and of effort in the area when you have a C-section scar. Now, it's not to say that when you have a C-section scar that you're like doomed forever. There's very simple, very good ways to walk yourself through a process on how you can start to resolve the scar physically and energetically and emotionally. So let's tap into this second phase here, the emotional and energetic components. So when I am talking about scars, emotionally and energetic, I'm always talking about them in the context of before the event or the situation, in this circumstance, the C-section, during the actual procedure or incident itself, and then after. Because these three places on the timeline could have very different set of emotion, very different vibe, very different feeling that goes on. And this is where I would need you to know what it means for you. Like, how is your C-section in particular? Was it planned? Was it an emergency? Did you feel like the hospital staff didn't treat you very well after? Do you look at yourself in the mirror anymore after? Very common that women don't. So there's tons of things that we need to think about in this kind of stage. So let me just address the before, and then we'll go during and then after. So what I want you to think about is, for the before piece, is the emotions around the C-section itself. Was it planned or not? How did you feel as a woman? It's really common that I hear women saying that they feel like they didn't get to go through that like female process of giving birth naturally, which they think is like the way it should be done. A lot of women are saying this after they have C-sections. They feel some sense of remorse that they didn't get to go through that birthing process. So that's a thing that I want you to think about. And then any kind of like emotional strain or stress or worry before the actual surgery, that the C-section itself. We want to think about that. We want to get in touch with that for ourselves. Then during, again, what was actually going on during your C-section? Was there Did something go wrong? Did something almost go wrong? Was there a moment of panic? And it could be relationship dynamics between you and the hospital staff, you and your partner, you and other family members. All of these things will kind of come in and create stuckness and stagnation in the scar itself. It will get kind of lodged and stuck in there, quite literally. And then the biggest part, I think, is the after for women. There's a huge piece around self-confidence and that also feeling worthy, like did they go through the birth process how they had wanted to, how they, in their mind, think a woman should. This is all kind of things that we ourselves bring upon ourselves as like a construct or a conditioning. And so we want to be in touch with that. We want to really know these three stages for ourselves because if we haven't processed them out, they will remain stuck and stagnant in the scar. And even if, like, say, for example, you had something very traumatic going on during the birth of your child, and you did seek help after, and you did receive benefit from that. Because the scar work that I'm talking about is directly touching the scar combined with breath work and movement, there'll be things inside the scar that you may not have realized were there or didn't think were still there. Because some of these things were so impactful in our lives, the birth of your child's a big deal, that we may not be getting all of the pieces, all of the emotionality, all of the physical unwinding. And so we want to think about grabbing all of this stuff with the scar work. It's really, really important to have that kind of open mind. A lot of women will just say, like, I've done work on that. I'm good. I did that already. And that's totally fine. And I am in full agreement that, and do not doubt at all that you did go through the work and that it was really beneficial and was impactful and you did feel change. However, the way that this scar work is starting to directly work with that, work with the physical, work with the energy, it could pull up stuff that you may not have recognized was still there. So that is the kind of emotional energy component with the before, during, and after I want you to think about. And then just on the whole, as a woman, to have a scar in this area is a big deal. This is our like center. This is what makes us women. This is where we feel that sense of connection to our femininity. And if there's a scar there, oftentimes we feel disconnected from that. Oftentimes we feel badly about the way that we look there. Oftentimes we just feel like since that C-section, nothing has been right in this area. So we have all of these very valid reasons to start to push away and like disconnect from this area. And this is incredibly common. It doesn't just happen with C-sections, it happens with a variety of other different situations that go down in this kind of lower abdomen, pelvis, pelvic floor area. But we want to recognize that maybe, probably, we have come away from tapping into our innate female power. As women, this is something we always want to like re-invoke, reconnect with in some way every single day. And oftentimes women feel like this is a black, kind of dark area where they don't feel. And sometimes they don't feel because the scarring actually gave them numbness. Please know that you can change that numbness. You're not stuck like this. That's the reason why I'm doing all these educational videos, is because you're not stuck like you are. However you are, there's answers and there's ways to move this stuckness, this stagnation. And I'm trying to share this out with the world so that women feel, first of all, that their feelings and their experience is valid, and to know that there's answers out there to help them resolve stuff like infertility. If you're trying to have a second child, a scar may be a reason for it. Chronic pain, unexplained back pain, women getting stuff like cortisone shots in their pelvis and their low back, and nothing's helping. They've tried everything. Nobody's talking about the scar. It's highly positive that the scar will be in play to some degree. It's my job to figure out what percentage of that it is, but there's all of these unknown things that we think we're just stuck with because of XYZ. But when you get this perspective, you can start thinking about it in another way. And another thing is exhaustion and just fatigue. I want you to think about how heavily how much it can like heavily weigh down your nervous system, your all systems really, but your nervous system and your fascia and your connective tissue and how you move, how that is all kind of impacted and impeded by the scar. So I want you to start to look at this all in a different way. And to the point that I addressed in the thyroid video on Tuesday, is I gave a really interesting point. If you have a scar on your midline, it's very likely that you will also feel bilateral stuff to in like the neighborhood. So what do I mean by that? I gave the example of if you have like hand, wrist, elbow, shoulder stuff on both sides, it needs to be both sides. What are these arms plugged into? They're plugged into your thoracic spine and your cervical spine. So if you have a scar here and you're also experiencing bilateral wrist stuff, it's because of the scar. I don't know what percentage because I don't know your history, but I guarantee the scar is in play. In the same way, when I'm talking about the C-section scar here, if you have bilateral foot stuff, meaning 2 feet are doing things, you have foot pain, plantar fasciitis, big toe stuff, Achilles tendonitis, my foot hurts on both sides kind of thing. It could be both knees, it could be both calves, it could be both hips. It's it's I'm going to say this and I do mean this. I'm positive it has something to do with the C-section scar. My job as a clinical therapist is to figure out what percentage, but I know that the C-section scar will be in play for bilateral leg stuff because your 2 legs are plugged into your one pelvis and your pelvis sits on your one lumbar spine and your scar is right there. It's so common that women will have a C-section scar like, here, and then they'll also have low back pain in the same vector. So they'll have like the C-section scar here and like quite low back pain, and you just draw a line through their body, and the pain's in the back in the same vector in the exact same line. So I want you to start thinking this way. Start thinking more holistically, more fully, and just be curious and know that there's answers to your problem. So what's my answer? How can we start? What's the preliminary thing that we can do? So, sorry, I'm nasal drip today. So, what I said last for the thyroid scar on Tuesday, I gave an exercise about doing range of motion. This range of motion is incredibly impactful for the neck, but it's not really the best idea to do as a preliminary thing for the lumbar spine. Why? Because most women who have C-sections are already feeling like kind of vulnerable in the low back. It's usually a place that is often like getting tweaked or like their back will go out. You'll hear this all the time with women who have C-sections. And this is because the low back is very vulnerable because none of the core is functioning at 100%. It's like whatever percentage is that, it's not 100. So we don't want to just go right into range of motion in the back for this. That's not my preliminary suggestion for those reasons. What I want you to do is I want you to instead, you're going to learn how to breathe into the scar, which I'll show you in a moment. It's very simple. Now, I always give this first piece. You have to do this piece. I gave like a big kind of ranted on it on Tuesday. The importance of going through the first phase. The first phase is you must contact the scar with your touch. You're touching your body in a meaningful way and wanting to get information about the physical component of the scar, how it feels. Does it feel ropey? Is there numbness? Just do you feel like gunkiness? You're gonna just contact the scar and just meet it. Most of us don't touch our scars after we got them because it's too much, and that's okay. But I'm asking you to do it now as a preliminary step. And the second thing is to feel the energetic component around it. So touching the scar, eyes are closed, and you're gonna just start to feel into this and just see what arises, gathering information physically and also emotionally. So you get a good, clear sense of your before, during, and after phase. Maybe you feel fear. Maybe that starts to like really rise. Maybe you feel anger. Maybe you feel sad. Whatever it is, you got to figure it out so that you know how impactful this scar is, how heavily it's weighing on your emotion, on your energy, and also physically, how it's actually kind of holding you back. That's the thing you have to do for every single scar. Now, the second thing is what I'm suggesting specifically for the C-section is to learn how to breathe into this area. Women don't breathe into their lower abdomen. We don't for a variety of different reasons, which you'll probably hear me talk about over the course of all these videos. But just to keep it really simple, we don't breathe into our scars. We try to not give any input into our scars. We try to pretend that they're not there. And I'm asking you now to start to breathe your breath, actually pushing the inhales into the scar and then allowing your body to exhale and feeling that like rhythmical wave coming in and out of the scar tissue. Ideally, while you're touching. Touch is a really powerful sense. We need to work with that as best we can. Now, if you have your eyes closed, you're just feeling into the moment and you're contacting the scar and you're doing your gentle, slow, deep breathing, you may feel a variety of different things come up, or you may feel nothing. And it totally depends on the person. If you feel a lot, you want to be very gentle and respectful and honoring of your own situation. What happened in there? It's really important not to push and force yourself through something, but you want to know whoa, I didn't know that was all there. That's really interesting. I want to move into this very respectfully. Or on the other side, Kendra, I feel nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. That's even more of a reason to tread lightly and gently because it means there's so much disconnection and detachment from the area that you also want to be moving very respectfully. So, wherever you are on the spectrum, my preliminary suggestion is to spend 5 minutes a day after you've done step one. Gotta do step one. Please do step one. It's so important because I don't want you to get into the scar work and go, whoa, and like Pandora's box opens up. I need you to really meaningfully touch and contact your scar so you know what you're going to walk into. You know and acknowledge and you feel that so that you can, plan stuff out accordingly. Not necessarily like plan every little step, but just know what you are about to do. Scar work is really important. Scars matter, and nobody knows this. And so I want you to listen to this in a very curious way and know that maybe you didn't know this before, and that's fine. Nobody's really talking about it except for me. And I want you to know that as you go through this process, it's incredibly impactful, super healing, very powerful, very transformative, and you need to treat that whole process with respect. So you got to do step number one, and you got to do step number two, 5 minutes a day for maybe a week, maybe a month, and just contacting and directly pushing your breath into the area. So you're stimulating the scar to start stretching and then relaxing. You're starting to work on that scar in a very gentle, kind way. So that's what I have for today as far as C-sections. There's so much to talk about with C-sections. I hope that brought in some information. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm just looking over here to make sure that if we have any questions or not. I'll just stay here for a moment. If you need to type some questions out, if you're watching this on the replay, please just type your questions. I can see everything that goes on in this group, and I'm very present and active inside the group. So if you have a question, type it in and I'll see it and respond. And if there's a big question, I'll make it into a live itself because I want this information to just reach out and stretch to all women far and wide so that we don't feel stuck in our situation and we start to feel that sense of empowerment, like I can take control of my health and I can do this so that I want to feel better and I know that I can by following these steps. Getting the physical, getting the emotional and the energy, and bringing it all on board so you start to walk yourself through a very transformative process. I had originally said that I was gonna do one of these a week. I'm thinking I may just go twice a week. There's a lot of scars coming in. So at the very top of this Facebook group, you'll see an announcement page. And there's like a pink, what is it? It's like red or something, like red with some patterns. And it says, put the scar down that you're interested in the bottom of this thread. There's a lot of scars in there. So I want to get through as many as I can. So there's people talking about piercings. There's people talking about metal in different parts of their body. There's all sorts of things. It doesn't matter what scar you're interested in. I want to help you. It could be a super small little thing and we could just talk it out, or it could be something really big. They all matter. Stepping on glass matters. getting hit, like hitting the counter when you're 4 years old in the noggin, it matters. So think about these things. Think about women in your life and invite them into this group so that they can all benefit from this wisdom. And yeah, you're welcome, Lorraine. I'm glad to have you live. It's nice to see you, or sort of see you. You know what I mean? Yeah, so 3 C-section scars on the same spot. That's a very good point. You want to address each of those situations accordingly. You want to go through the before, during, and after stage for each of those C-sections. And you may have had, just for example, I don't know anything about Lorraine's history, but just as an example, not pertaining to her, maybe one C-section, maybe your first one, caused a lot of panic, a lot of fear, a lot of worry, and you carried that vibe, that kind of feeling or that anxiety with you through each of the other ones. So we want to address that. We want to touch into that and we want to start to work that. So thank you for just adding that point in. All right. I don't see any other comments in here. Please continue to ask questions. I am always here for you. And thank you for joining me live.